Everybody, for another pregame discussion. I'm a little tired and busy, so this is gonna be a quick one. But I'll try to do the best I can to get through all the good juicy details for you guys. Um, so we are at game eight. This is probably by far the most anticipated matchup, the one where there's a lot of back and forth trash talk and there's a lot of going back and forth within the teams. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. But just an overview of a relay. Currently, game eight, Team DZ took the lead today. Yeah, Delta was Mafia against Zanjori and took the dub there. And now Team DZ's up 4 to Team Mac 3. And the judges are now 3 out of 7. And essentially, they are in win now mode. Every game is a must win. If they lose any from here on out, the judges lose. So every single game is super key for the judges. And in fact, actually, for this matchup, unfortunately, Molly had to take a step out. So Rabbit, who had done game one, is going to come and step in, probably in a harder matchup than SPF was in terms of determining the alignments between the two players. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think no better than to have Rabbit there. But yeah, very, very close game. These two teams have been neck and neck. They've been trading wins. There hasn't been any team that has been able to get a string. It's been every single time one team gets one, the other team just goes right back and gets it again. And so this is a very interesting type of like back and forth between the teams, and there's really no momentum that stays, right? It just kind of like it's like a ping pong. It goes back and forth. And I think the thing to look at really is how the teams really kind of rally together. It seems to me that after each game, whether win or loss, these teams kind of rally with each other and they kind of pump their next person up, and it's kind of like a next man up mentality, right? It's like, hey, we either lost, we won, but now it's your turn to go and show what you got and do the best what you can for the team. And then I think these teams have shown a great spirit and ability really to rally behind the troops and get their focus on to the next player that's competing in the 1v1. So I think this is fantastic to see these teams really coming together and bonding, not just for an individualistic purpose, but for a team purpose overall to win the games. And I think it's a lot of fun to see. And even we talked about with the judges too. I mean, now they're 3 out of 7. They are strategically planning on each player and trying to focus on what are the tells for them, what do they need to focus on, and how they can get it right. And I think really it's going to be fun to watch. And so, we talk about the matchup, Schweppes versus representing Team Mac versus Matt representing Team DZ. And obviously, we mentioned the judge earlier is going to be a Rabbit for this one. So looking at, Schweppes from Team Mac, Schweppes is someone who I played with in quals, in champs, and he's someone who has a little bit of ego to him, and he kind of embraces that, right? He embraces that as part of his personality, but he's also someone as town who has a very high whim. He is someone that he's like a freight train just coming straight at you, and he has all pure confidence in his ability to do what he needs to do to not only win games but to push his solve, to get everything out there and just push his agenda. And he is very forth going about it, and he's just super excited every time he gets to step on the field as town. And as we mentioned, yeah, high win, very active, gets into it a lot with players and stuff like that. And we mentioned he does have some ego stuff at times where he feels super confident in his ability, and when others don't see it, he kind of dismisses them in a way that's might turn some players off. But he's a player who kind of goes hard at it, and he's one of those players really that when he plays a game, you can really see when he believes in certain things, and based off the reads or progressions or what he displays in the game state, you can tell that when this guy is down, he has a firm belief in what he is representing and really pushes it to the max. And I think it's kind of funny because as Mafia, Streeps is a chronic buzzer. He's someone who likes to bust a lot, someone who likes to deep wolf a lot, so he has a lot of experience in these end games and really sustaining the early pressure and kind of figuring out a way to get himself out of the limelight and push his partners when necessary and try to make himself look good after the flips. So I think it's he's very strategic in how he plays the game as Mafia, especially to try to give himself the edge. And I think the main thing is when you look at these players that are more of an ego style players or players that have more self confidence in themselves. I think the biggest thing to look for in their town versus Mafia games is really, do these players believe in what they're saying? Obviously a lot of people like get turned off by this idea of belief or authentic, but really it does come down to, are these reads phoned in for the sake of just doing it, or are there reads that are coming from a mindset where this player in Shreves really wants to solve the game, really wants to push his game state, really believes that this is how to win the game through X, Y, and Z, through these reads, and through establishing, a consensus. So I really believe this ideology of looking at his mindset and saying, really, does this come from a belief, you know, like someone who truly came up with these reads, and really does it make sense, and are they pushing it as hard? I think those are the things to look at, really are kind of the approach, is it authentic, and how the magnitude, the velocity, the force behind the pushes, do they really line up with their belief? Because I think the biggest thing is usually with these players is, and with troops, which I saw a little bit when I was doing some metadata diving, is there is a lack of correlation sometimes between the solve and then the consistency in their internal confidence in the solves, right? So these players as Town usually have a high belief in themselves as well as a high ability to portray and push their solve. As Mafia, they usually have a high confidence, but they have a lower willing to push their solve, or lower willing to get it through, and is a little more flip floppy. And so I think these internal inconsistencies are really the key, at least for Shoots, from what I saw, to determine whether or not he's Town or Mafia. And obviously, you can talk about him pushing Town, could be a Town tell, but I think more importantly, it's really looking at that internal mindset, that internal workings, the clockwork, and seeing whether or not these mindsets are consistent or not with how they are pushing the game, with how they develop their reads, and how they're coming to their belief. And I really do think in these games we have seen the color of, or not the color, but the role PM having an effect on the player's mindset. So I think, do expect that these players, Matt and Trips, are going to be ones that really go at each other a lot, like dog bulls or bulldogs fighting in a fight, going back and forth. A lot of fist fighting. It's basically a boxing match, right? It's going to be a bunch of blows back and forth. It's like a offensive explosion. Teams just scoring left and right, and I think it's going to be a lot of blows, a lot of punches. But I think really it's going to come down to, are these punches, are these sucker punches, do they make sense? Are they forced? Are they coming from a mindset? Obviously we know they have TMI. We talk about this all the time. We hammer it down. It's beating like a dead horse at this point. But the point is, the way they are formulating, the way they're coming to it, is it from a mindset that they believe in as Town, or is it one that they're just pushing to portray something even though they don't necessarily believe in it? Because we have seen the Mafia self-admit a lot of the times in the previous games that, well, I'm not able to push this, I'm not able to go this route because it's sometimes hard, and they admit the Towniness. So I think Town really, when they have that inherent mindset that they know this guy's guilty, that they know they have a self-conscious, the other opponent, they really push on it hard, and they really focus on all the itty-bitty details, the minute things from the opponent player. And I think expect to see that to shine really in more so whoever's a Town between the two, to really come forth. And I think, Shoops, as we mentioned, someone with high whim a lot, and especially if he's Town, he's going to have a lot more magnitude behind his pushes, a lot more, meaning behind his posts, and a lot more, punches coming out for sure. And I think, the one funny part that people talk about is, if he's Mafia, what is he going to do? Is he going to self-vote, because of the idea of busing and stuff like that? So I don't know, maybe if he doesn't vote himself, maybe he's confirmed Town, but no, jokes aside, I think, they talk about the steam burning down a little bit as Mafia, but I think, the biggest thing to look at for Shreeps is, if he's Town, expect to see a lot of sucker punches, expect to see a lot of blows at the opponent, and expect to see a lot of his mindset really shining through in terms of, is this an authentic thought process? Is this someone who is super confident, and is this someone who, with that confidence, is pushing a heavy solve that aligns with their internal perspective and how they're pushing the game set? So I think these three things, the internal mindset, the velocity of the pushes, and also the pressure they place in the thread, and how they, how many punches they throw at their opponent, not literally, but not literally, but mentally. I think those are the keys to really determine Shreep's alignment and how he goes about the game. So I think this will be a lot of fun to watch. And when you look at the flip side, in Matt, who is representing Team DZ, Matt is someone who's also an ego player. He's a little more blanketed in terms of, he really believes, and I do think this too, that Matt's a great player and always feels like he's a valuable asset to town, and never wants to get killed, and tries to give out his solve as much as he can, with the belief behind his reads. And I think the main thing for Matt really is he is a player who. At times has a lot of unexplained reads. He has a lot of reads from the gut, from the snap, from kind of just when we talk about snap reads, really just looking at a player, looking at their structure, looking at what they do, and able to connect those tells with each player and figure out whether or not they're Mafia or Town based off their first 10 to 20 posts. And I think Matt does such a terrific job of this, and he feels so confident in his ability. And we talk about with streams, Matt is someone who loves to push his solve a lot, loves to get people on board, loves to make a big deal about it, and just keeps going gung-ho about it. And he does the same thing as Mafia, but as Town, he is someone who is very accurate. And really, you look about when you talk about his Mafia versus Town gameplay, his Mafia is a little more powerful. He tries to get his agenda, tries to kill a lot of Town, and save his partners. Obviously, there are circumstances, there are exceptions where he may go against this, as we saw in the and 17 Mountains game she hosted. But essentially, if Matt knows, if he's in a game where he feels that he is not going to die early, that he's not going to get caught, he is going to play in a very powerful way. Whereas Town, he's someone who really, stands up for his reads, develops them super quickly, a lot of them unexplained at times, and really kind of pushes his solve to the max. And I think, we talk about being unexplained, but I think the formation and when he formulates his reads and how he does it does kind of align based off the posts from the player that he reads, and kind of the things that he's connecting, even though they're omitted, there is some thought process connected there that at the end of the day that does help to align whether or not Matt is actually pushing an agenda, or whether or not, again, he's forming these authentically. And even though it may be hard to understand at first, he's a player that is really, down to earth, and you're able to connect with and really truly understand where he's coming from. And I think once you understand where he's coming from and how he reads the game, kind of from a micro type of player, or a post by post, very, it's a mix of game state and the player themselves, really how they present themselves. I think he's so good at that's why it's so hard to explain. But when you see how he makes his reads and at the timing he makes it, and with the ferocity he pushes his reads, I think that is really alignment indicative to determine how Matt is. And really, I think Matt's a player that a lot of people get wrong at times, because sometimes he'll just do whatever he wants, and he's not necessarily troll and threaten. He'll be memey and stuff, but he'll just kind of do whatever, because I don't give a I'm mad. I'll do what I want, and you can do what you want, but I'm gonna do me, and I'm gonna do what I want for this game. And as Town, he's gonna push us off a lot. As Mafia, he's also gonna push us off a lot. But I think really, as Mafia, he sometimes has a lot of opportunistic changes and a lot of opportunistic reval on reads, depending on how it fits his agenda and based off thread consistency. He tends to fit his reads more so there, and he loves to pocket a lot of PoE players. I think that's a key part of Matt's Mafia game, is especially to the ladies. Matt loves to get the Porsches, get the evacuees, get those players. If they're Town and they're PoE'd, he loves defending those Town PoE'd players. Why? To make himself look good. Why? Because he doesn't need to defend them. Why? Because Matt cares so much about winning the game that he does what he needs to get credit and look good, and then at the end of the day pushes other anti-contestants or reads on other players to kind of get that powerful mentality in there. And I think Matt does such a terrific job of really understanding the game state and kind of connecting, hey, what do I need to do, how do I need to go about this game state, who do I need to push, how to make myself look good, how to make my opponents look good if I flip, and just kind of pushing in a way to keep his teammates from dying, as well as surviving and further his Mafia win con. And I think his Town very similar in the sense where he is a very somewhat ego player, but very pushy player in terms of his solve, always believes in himself, feels super confident, and wants to get it through, and does what he needs to do. And I think he also does it in somewhat of a jovial manner, where he's very happy about how he presents himself, and kind of makes a lot of jokes to how he gets there, And so I think, a lot of Matt's gameplay, really, I think one of the underrated traits is he's a player who uses RVS, and he uses, the initial postings and, the initial snap reads and structure to kind of further his reads and get a better feeling. And, he when he knows, when he states how he feels, about a game state or how he feels about certain players, he makes it known and, confronts them to try to get a better understanding of really, understanding the player and seeing whether or not they are coming from a town or mafia mindset. He analyzing the tells that he keeps in kind of this memory bank, or, in a way, like knowing kind of like how each player plays. And once he's more familiar with their play, he's able to, kind of determine whether or not from their town games or mafia games, whether or not this is, their town game or mafia game. So he does a good job of sifting through those and kind of really figuring out, through the haystack, finding that needle in the haystack of the true alignment of the players he's analyzing. I think, as we mentioned, with these two players, from a ego standpoint, they're very, very confident and self-confident about their belief and their ability to win games, not only to play well but to win games, and they always feel like they are an important part of their team, and never really sell themselves short. And that's what you gotta love about them is they'll keep really their head in the game, always feel confident about themselves. But I think the main thing is analyzing these internal consistencies with these two players and seeing, hey, is what they're saying, does it line up with their self-presentation of themselves, with the way they feel so self-confident in themselves? Does it line up with the way they are pushing themselves with their self? And in this case, for this game, because it's a one-on-one, does it align with how they're pushing the other player, with the punches they're throwing back and forth? Does their confidence align with how they feel about going about it? Do they feel good about themselves based off the content that they provide? And if there is some internal inconsistencies and that they have a false presentation of themselves to appear towny, when in reality the content they're giving doesn't match necessarily the way they're pushing, then it might be indicative that they're mafia. Or if they feel very confident about their push, and they go super heavy about it and they feel good about it, and the content they're providing is XYZ reasoning that makes sense and is backed up, then yeah, they're probably town. So I think really looking at that internal mindset and how they present themselves, connecting with the way they push the players, each other in the thread, I think is going to be so indicative. And I think, we talk about the punching blows, right? I think this is going to be a boxing match. Players that feel like they can beat the other opponent regardless of their alignment. I think they're going to go at it super hard, and really, I think it's one that it's going to be who is going to be able to stand after the last punch, who is going to get knocked out. And I think whoever gets knocked out after these blows at the end is probably the one that is going to end up losing, whether or not they're Mafia or town. So really, it's so important for both these players to withstand each other's blow, keep that whim going. And I think it would be somewhat indicative, depending, for the whim of these players, whether or not, depending on the amount of blows they get, the amount of punches back and forth they can withstand. I think it will really show for some of the players, but I don't think it will be as alignment indicative as we discussed about the other factors, because we know, for example, Matt loves Mafia, Schweppes loves playing town, so it really depends on the player. But I think really this is a matchup that I think has been kind of built up from the beginning. Each of these players in their teams, according to my sources, they've been kind of talking about the other player. They've been kind of, self, as we talked about before, being self-confident, their ability to beat the other player and feeling good about themselves. So I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. Matt versus Schweppes. And we talk about the judge in Rabbit. Judge Rabbit coming with the wig. He won the first one, and in a must-win situation, you gotta win these next 3 games. And starting with this game 1 against Matt versus Schweppes, I think you gotta feel very good about Rabbit, someone who is also very good at snap reads and very good at analyzing game state and kind of micro perspectives of players, and seeing, hey, whether or not this feels phoned in or not with how they push the other player, and especially considering how considering how Rabbit validated SBF's push on Waza and feeling it was phoned in. I think seeing how this game state is not going to be necessarily about these players presenting themselves in a towny manner. No. It's going to be these players really going hard, as you mentioned, this boxing match. So I think Rabbit is such a great player at analyzing how these players go at each other, and kind of sifting through the content, the meaning, the purpose behind their pushes, and whether or not it makes sense from a town perspective or mafia perspective. So I think, Rabbit is going to have a very fun time with this game, and I think he's going to be able to have a great way of analyzing this, back and forth fight. And he's gonna push. If he has any problems, he's gonna push too. But I think expect to see him a little more observant. He's gonna dictate the game state. He's gonna dictate what he wants, and kind of let them know how he's feeling, and being transparent at times. Might be deceptive other times, but I think he's really going to make his presence known. He's going to be not necessarily a bystander, but he's going to be someone who's going to make sure that the judges know he's there, and he's going to make his, impact, and he's going to sit back, watch the interaction, maybe eat some popcorn on the side, and then at the end of the day, come to a decision, give the reasoning why, and I think his ability really to sit back and look through these pushes is going to be so key. And I think really, as we mentioned, seeing who comes out on the top at the end of the day is going to be the one that's going to be able to, I think, withstand the most blows and the most punches. And I think the person who is able to come up with the better arguments, and doesn't feel as phoned in, and they're consistent, their internal perspective is more consistent with how they push and they present themselves, I think it's going to be the person that's more likely down. So it's going to be a fun matchup. It's going to be a boxing match. And I think Rabbit is going to be very, very well prepared. And for a must win for the judge, your great players come up to play. And I think Rabbit is, after that game one feeling and the way the judges are doing, I think he's going to exactly show up for his team in a must win situation. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch and spectate. And I think, one thing to note is that Matt is most likely going to be AFK, in the beginning. Yeah, I think he has some things going on, but he's definitely going to come in later in the game, hopefully 4 to 6 more hours after the start of day. So I think it's very important for Matt to get back on track and really kind of get his footing set and kind of withstand those initial blows, and then kind of, firing back on all cylinders. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Schweppes deals with that, with the lack of a presence early on, and then how does Matt come after being absent for the large part, and then how does he kind of get at Schweppes? How does he kind of settle himself in? And I think that once that settles in, that's going to be very telling of how the matchup goes, and kind of figuring out who is a Town or Mafia between them based off the responses and the back and forth. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a fun boxing match. Matt versus Schweppes. Team DZ's up 4-3. This is an important game for Mac. They every single time they've lost, they came back. So it's going to be fun to see how this one goes. And, Rabbit's a judge. Must-win game for the judges. A lot on the line. A lot at stake. So it's going to be a fun game to watch. And I'll see you guys there.